Welcome back to Lens on Africa. It's about that time where we begin our weekly conversation, but to do that, here is a backgrounder to set the pace.
Both historical and modern antecedents suggest that international migration is an inevitable and complex phenomenon that touches political, economic, and social lives of the interconnected world. Some of the reasons suggested for the migration trend of Africans to Europe include the dramatic expansion of African population, burden on economic resources for provision of employment, infrastructure, basic amenities in terms of electricity, health care, education, and housing. The continent's compounding problems characterized by poverty, corruption, political conflict, degradation of the environment, and unemployment, among other reasons. Given that the flow of extracontinental migration seems unbalanced and usually from African countries to the European Union, it is important to examine the benefits and cost of migration to both sides. Despite leaving Africa for Europe for better lives, migrants continue to have strong social, cultural, and economic ties with their countries of origin. These are accomplished by sending goods and remittances home for reduction of poverty and increase in the standard of living of family members. The global remittance to low and middle income nations increased by 8.5% in 2017. Nigeria, with 22 billion US dollars, and Egypt with 20 billion US dollars, respectively, ranking 5th and 6th positions as countries receiving huge remittances in the world. Apart from Nigeria, the two other countries in sub-Saharan Africa with large remittances are Senegal and Ghana. Remittance constitute up to 50 to 90% of the household income in some developing countries. In addition, there is the transfer of skills and knowledge acquired in the host countries to countries of origin when migrants return home for short, long, and permanent stays. Although positive effects of migration exist for countries of origin, there are also some drawbacks which may have significant negative repercussions. Brain drain is already reported to be acute in sub-Saharan Africa. This weakens business growth, limits innovation and national development in technology, agriculture, health, and education. One then wonders if migration has done Africa more harm than good.
Joining me to expand the conversation on African migration, trends, drawbacks are Professor of Political Science and History, author of over 20 fiction and non-fiction books, and recipient of numerous international awards, including the Martin Luther King Commission's Educational Excellence Award in the state of Ohio, USA 2013. A professor, an author, and international citizen, Professor Emeka Anyaogu. It's a pleasure to have you in the studio once again.
Thank you very much for having me.
Also joining us in the studio is Technology Service Consultant with over 25 years experience working for some of the largest technology companies in the world in the areas of finance, oil and gas, and even in public sector. Mr. Emeka Adebowale Onye Okoro, it's good to have you with us in the studio. I mean, 25 years of work experience. It's amazing in technology. How do you do it? Most of us can barely cope with the few apps that we have, and you're talking 25 years of work experience. Amazing. All right, also joining us via Zoom is a seasoned IT professional who has built a career within IT infrastructure capacity for over a decade. A Cisco certified network associate and Amazon Web Service infrastructure engineer. He is currently studying for his MSc in Artificial Intelligence at the University of Hull, United Kingdom. Mr. John Odumoso, it's good to have you and welcome to the conversation.
Oh, thank you very much.
All right, I'd like to ask, since you're online, let's begin with you. What is the difference? I mean, migration has always been part of human history, but what's the difference with this particular migration happening now between Africa and the West?
Okay, there's actually no difference because what we have come to see when we get here is to see you go to the hospital and you see Nigerian doctors. My lecturers are Nigerians. So apparently nothing has changed, only that we are in a place where there is no electricity. There's no electricity problem. There's no downtime in electricity. There is good infrastructure. There is no ASU strike. So I think basically I would say that has really changed. But in terms of human capacity, you go to the hospital, you see Nigerian nurses, Nigerian doctors, my lecturers. In fact, 2 of my major courses are Nigerians. And what's good about it is that they are Nigerian trained. They had their BSc, Masters, and PhD in Nigeria. So it's not that they were trained here, they are all Nigerian trained. So that climb has a very good infrastructure. That's all I can say.
All right, Professor, would you agree that this is just business as usual? Isn't there anything different about this present phase or age of migration?
Well, I have to say that there are some similarities, and dissimilarities, obviously, over an extended period of time. Unlike in the past, human beings obviously migrated to other places. That's how we have Europeans in Africa, in Southern Africa, and so for parts of East Africa, Kenya, etc. And that's how Africans were taken to the Americas.
Yes, it was.
But the difference now is the fact that unlike the past, people went to places they didn't really know what to expect there. Yes, the early Europeans who went to settle in the Americas, or the ones who came to Southern Africa, came for a specific purpose, to find land, free land. Because most of them came from monarchical systems, where the monarch owned the realm, and everybody within it was a subject
of the monarch.
So as we say in Igbo, he had the knife and the yam.
Absolutely.
So to escape this, and a very rigid class structure in the case of the Europeans, they went somewhere else looking for a place where they could settle new land. Of course, the price was that the natives of the place were often subdued and killed and so on and so forth. Well, that's different, where today people through the media, mass media, social media, etc., have a general idea of what circumstances life look like in other places. And therefore, much of their motivation and incentive is to go and participate in that which they imagine to be a better life. And of course, as the young man said, there are some measurable variables that are indeed better. For example, infrastructure he talked about. But there are also other things like the social factors of daily life and interacting with the society, etc., which infrastructure in and of itself doesn't solve for you. And maybe we'll get into that later.
We'll get into that, most definitely. Mr. McKay, I'm going to ask you something you said. If you really agree that a motivating factor this time for a lot of people is the participation in what we imagine to be a better life.
Absolutely. I think if you look at what is going on today, and I don't agree that it's business as usual.
Okay.
I actually think there is some level of escalation, and I'll give you the reason why this is happening. In Africa, especially, and in Asia, we have a very, very, very young population.
Yes, we do.
over 60% of the population of this continent are still under 25 years. That's a huge number of people. And these are people who are of work age, of school age.
They learn easily.
And there are opportunities for schools, opportunities for work, and not enough in our continent. So people generally will go to where you have opportunities. And like Prof. My namesake said, migration has been part of humanity from inception, and it will continue. And I mean, there was a time Europeans were migrating to Australia. Europeans were migrating to North America because there weren't opportunities in Europe.
Indeed.
So the key driver for migration is usually economics. You know, people are looking for better life. People are looking for more opportunities. So the thing is, if you add what is going on today, the perfect storm of Brexit and the inflations going on in Europe, and then you look at, the lack of opportunities in Nigeria. So it creates the magnet. They need people, we have people, and we don't have enough to cater for the people we have. So generally people will migrate. And then another point Prof made is the impact of social media. Today, everybody with a mobile phone knows what is going on everywhere in the world. And it's no more like before you had to either listen to news or
write a letter and wait for 2 weeks for it to get across.
Instagram, with Facebook, there's an information overload. You know what is going on in every part of the world instantly. Okay. So people, like you said, want to go participate.
All right. So, Prof, I'm going to ask this question, and it's a question we're all going to answer. What is the cost of this surge of immigration to Africa, Nigeria and Africa at large? We know by the numbers, quite frankly, Asia has a higher migration rate than we do, but we seem to, some say we're suffering more from the migration process than countries like Asia. What's the real actual cost for us here?
I don't think anybody has been able to accurately measure completely, because you have a mixture of different types of people migrating.
Okay.
The impact that a doctor has leaving is not the same one as somebody who's not been well educated, who's just moving on a hope from crossing the Mediterranean to Europe. He will end up, or she, if they are lucky, doing a menial job there in Europe. And they may make a living, they may be electricity, but they're not going to be anything important in the society. It's a very big difference if a doctor leaves, because he takes a whole set of skills, or an engineer, and so on and so forth, with him abroad. So there is a measurable difference between those types of individuals migrating from a place. I would suspect that while the impact of the doctor or any other skilled person leaving will be greater, the number of the ordinary, for want of a better term, people leaving will be greater. So when you see the dramatic boat full of people, it looks very dramatic. And it is, obviously begs its own concerns. But the impact of the skilled worker who can deliver services, particularly in health, education, and so forth, here is much greater.
It is.
No question about it.
All right. So, Mr. Johnson, I'm going to ask you, since you're online, you're over there, you spoke about some of your lecturers you met. They were all Nigerians, doctors, nurses, all Nigerians. In your opinion, working there, what do you think would be the effect of this level of migration to the societies back here in Africa? Okay, we can't hear him. Hello? I think you should unmute. Okay, great.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Can you hear me now? Yeah, it simply means we are delivering our best brain to the West. Because irrespective of what has happened in Nigeria, somebody has got his BSc, Masters, and PhD, and with that wealth of experience and knowledge, decide to move abroad. Not because he's not good at what he's doing, just because there are better opportunities, like the professor in the studio has said, or economic opportunities. I can work without being afraid. You understand? So these are people that felt, oh, students, you want to learn to write and you cannot cope with the ASU strike there. They strike here too anyway. Lecturer goes on
They do.
striking.
Not the same
So,
magnitude.
But yes, everywhere, the word ambulance strike and nurses strike.
But the magnitude is
Everywhere.
different, like Mr. Mecca said.
Yes, what's more important is just because they are more structured, they are better economically, and they have opened their door to the world. They have opened their door to the world. By February 1st, they are stopping teachers from Nigeria. Teachers that want to come to Europe, teachers that want to come to England, they are free to come. They are shortage of teachers, so Nigeria is one of the best pick. So Nigerian brains are good. We are highly talented young population. We are aging, but we have a very young population we are tapping into.
All right, thank you. Mr. Mecca, so I'm going to ask follow-up on that question. We have a year or two ago, we had a large chunk of our doctors leave. We don't have enough doctors in Nigeria to service our population, and a large chunk of our medical professionals left the country and continue to leave the country. He's talking about now education. The UK said is opening its doors to a lot of our people in the educational sector to come over to the UK. Can you quantify in some way, can you imagine, explain to us what this is costing already? At least we can see some of it in the medical sphere, but what this is likely to cost us in education, vis-a-vis some of the conversations we had earlier on the number of people who are getting in the university, who are getting university quality education. If more lecturers are leaving, what is going to happen?
Well, I mean, there's going to be a huge negative impact, especially with regards to losing our good resources. I'm talking about the doctors, I'm talking about the professionals. You know, the impact, you know, will be immediate for those ones. Now, if you look at the younger people who are leaving, the impact, not so much. I think there could be positive impact ultimately by the time we get our acts together and we're able to attract those brains back. You know, but the immediate impact of the doctors, the nurses that we're losing, the impact is immediate because it's our hospitals. If you go to some of the best hospitals, because we have some of the best resources. Nigerians have some of the best resources. We talk about our falling education system, our universities that are hugely under-resourced. Yeah. However, these same resources go overseas and compete favorably. So it tells you that the Nigerians are very resilient and are some of the smartest people on earth. What we need to do is invest more in those two sectors, health and education, because those are the things that determine whether a country succeeds or not. Ultimately. Health and education. And those are the key indices for human development. So the more we invest in them, then the more we are able to retain talent. Because we do not have enough doctors, like you said, we don't have enough nurses.
Yeah, we don't.
And yet, the few we have, we are losing. But we don't even have enough institutions to even train, the resources. So we have a shortage of, people coming out, from
very interesting perspective. And Professor, would you mind to comment on that? The fact that we don't have enough, out of what we have, a lot are leaving, and yet we don't have enough institutions to train the people, enough people to fill the gap and to satisfy our local demand.
No, I totally agree with him. Yeah. I think a lot of the indictments must go against the government, not just this government, even though it has its fair share of mess, but all the other governments before, because they have not had their priorities right. The current government, Buhari, had a budget, 2023 budget for education, that was, I believe, 1.79 trillion naira. Sounds like a big figure, but it was like third or fourth in magnitude of the things, telling you something about the government's priorities. And even as it is an increment of a certain amount from what it was before, which he expects us to applaud the government over. But the allocation is less than half what was recommended by UNESCO.
Absolutely.
Less than half for this business of investment in education. So they don't fully understand, I don't think, the elemental connection between education and development. Because if they did, all these years, by now, you would have a trickle. There will always be some people who go abroad
Yes, they will.
for whatever reasons, yeah? But you're going to find the vast majority being very much invested in their country and seeing the development and potential and so on, wanting to stay to be part of that.
All right,
So the
so
government has failed entirely
in that
regard,
area.
in my
All
opinion.
right, Mr. John, we're going to pull you into this conversation. Now, he said something very cogent that I need to. It says there's not a connection between, in the government's mind, between education, the quality of education, and development. Is that the issue, or is there a complete misunderstanding of what development means? It would appear something development is just roads and bridges and cars and those kind of things, and others think development is much more. What's the issue here?
Now, development is far more than that. Of recent, NC is highly influential, and yesterday something was trending on Twitter that somebody was in the hospital, and because of generator light, he sold a pharmacist because we lost a life. And the spouse of that person has the opportunity to migrate to where they will never think of that again in their life. They will never think of that again. As simple as light is, we lost a soul in an hospital. There wasn't light for 24 hours. And the conversation is very interesting that people started arguing, no, it cannot be. Somebody now say it is. I'm currently in an hospital. In fact, we have to bring our jet to the hospital.
My goodness.
So as basic as that is, so these are things that make people go. They are basic things. They are just as normal as anything. So
All right.
when those things are not available, when you are not sure that you are going to leave your house and come back, well, nobody will want to say, no, nobody will stay. You are not sure of that. As basic as going out and coming back is.
Thank you, Mr. John.
You understand? So this is a matrix.
Thank you. All right, so Emeka, I'm going to come back to you on this one as we round up. We just have about a minute or so and we'll round up with this. Migration is normal throughout human history, but like I said, there's something a little different, an element we've not talked about, especially in Nigeria. We are now seeing whole families migrating with they don't have the intent, most of them do not have the intention of coming back to Nigeria. Why are whole families migrating, and what is the possible outcome for us as a people?
Thank you. That's an interesting aspect of the whole migration dynamics. Why are people migrating with their family? Because they can. The opportunity has been provided. For instance, UK especially, UK government was giving visas to family members of those who were studying there.
Yes.
Remember, I mentioned earlier that they need, because of Brexit,
yes,
they need the skills. And we have the people. Okay, so they are trying to attract the people. And it's not helping matters that, the conditions at home are
not good.
So people are looking for better opportunities for their family. People want where their children can have good education. We spent half of last year, our children, spending out there 6 months at home. And a good chunk of those people, by the time the data for 2022 comes out, you will see it'll topple 2021. 2021 data for migration was the highest so far. Even though in the context of the population of Nigeria, it's not huge, but 2021 had the highest Center for Migration. Gave that figure. So 2022 is going to be even higher.
Thank you. Professor, in rounding up, last few words on this topic.
Well, I lived myself abroad for 36 years.
Wow.
And I left this country at the age of 18. I got married and I raised children there and so on. But there was always a nostalgic thing pulling me back here, which was why the first opportunity I got once I ended up my career was to come home. I believe that a lot of the ones who are leaving with their families, their primary motivation is to make sure their children get good education.
Yeah.
They will come back eventually.
Ultimately.
Maybe some of their children may not, because one of the potential hazards of living abroad is that you may contract all kinds of relationship, marriages, and so on, all kinds of other dynamics
Yeah.
that the people had not envisaged might come into play. But all things being equal, their parents are most likely going to come back here at some point, especially if the government gets things right here.
Thank you. Finally, Mr. John, your last words. What do we need to do to get it right? Are people going to come back? What do we need to do to attract these people back? In just a few seconds.
Okay, I actually believe people will come back because nobody likes to be in -5, -2. You understand that we have to get things right. We have to prioritize education, we have to prioritize infrastructure, and we have to prioritize health.
Thank you very much.
In the long run,
Prioritizing
people will come
education, prioritizing health, and people will come back to the country. Thank you very much. We've been talking about the cost of migration from Africa to Europe. It's been a pleasure, gentlemen, having you here, Professor, Mr. Mecca, and John. It's been amazing having you. Unfortunately, we're constrained for time, and this is just the tip of this conversation. We hope to continue this conversation later.